I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank.
I think this could potentially be the moment that ends Keir Starmer's career. He has absolutely infuriated everybody on both the pro-Israel side and the pro-Palestine with this announcement today. And he has shown that he has completely fallen for the Hamas propaganda about what is happening with aid. Let's take a further look at what he has said about the aid situation.
Palestinian people have endured terrible suffering. Now, in Gaza, because of a catastrophic failure of aid, we see starving babies, children too weak to stand, images that will stay with us for a lifetime. The suffering must end. Yesterday, I discussed this with President Trump, and we're mounting a major effort to get humanitarian supplies back in by air, and UK aid has been airdropped into Gaza today, and crucially, by land. We need to see at least 500 trucks entering Gaza every day. But ultimately, the only way to bring this humanitarian crisis to an end is through a long-term settlement.
Wow, okay, so let's show Keir Starmer the cold, hard facts as to exactly what is going on with the aid. We have the exact figures here. We're going to go straight into them, which shows crystal clear that Israel are not the ones responsible for children starving in Gaza. Before we get into it, make sure you click the subscribe button down below if you haven't already. Okay, so this here shows the number of pallets offloaded, Israel have allowed them in to Gaza, the number of pallets collected by the UN, and the number of pallets intercepted, i.e. they didn't make it to the destination because people decided, either hungry civilians as they say, or terrorists jumping on and stealing it, as we know has been happening. These are the figures for from the beginning of July, so from the 1st of July to the 29th, today's date. The number of pallets of aid offloaded was 17,261. Did the UN pick up all that aid and deliver it to starving children? No, they left 60% of it behind. And I'm going to show you footage of that in just a moment to prove it, in case you don't believe me so far. They only picked up 7,872 pallets of the aid. Explain that. Tell me how Israel is responsible for that. Keir Starmer very clearly said that Israel needs to allow the UN to continue distributing aid. The UN is allowed. They've got all this aid that they literally haven't picked up. It is sitting there rotting in the sun. And I'm going to show you that in a moment. And then this is the crazy thing, right? Of those 7,872 pallets that they have picked up, 7,282, like around 90% of them, have been intercepted. This is why Israel and the US decided to set up that Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, where they have aid centers run by Israel and the US in Gaza to try and stop the terrorists from intercepting the food. This is one of the only ways that Hamas can keep power over the people there and keep the money coming in to pay for their war against Israel, is by stealing food and selling it to people at extortionate prices and only allowing people to have food if they comply with everything Hamas says and does. If you misbehave, you're going to starve. They won't give it to you. That is how Hamas is continuing this war. Make no mistake. So Hamas and the UN are the ones responsible for this. Why is it Keir Starmer stood up at that press conference today, essentially laying the blame for everything on Israel. All he is doing is reading a bunch of propaganda headlines. You are the Prime Minister of this country. I don't blame a normal member of the public who spends 5 minutes just skimming through the news each day for being misled about this and thinking that Israel are starving all the kids, because that's the impression you would get if you just read a few headlines. But you are the Prime Minister of the country making a serious announcement, and you haven't read the facts. You think Israel have done this. UN are not picking up the food that Israel has allowed in, that Israel has delivered, and then the food that the UN does pick up is being intercepted by terrorists, by Hamas. What is wrong with you, Keir Starmer? Wake up! This is what Elon Levy, the former Israeli spokesperson, said. He says, Starmer is sabotaging ceasefire talks because he's giving Hamas a reason not to end the war. People will die because he's turning British foreign policy into student politics. Yeah, it reeks of student politics and incompetence. This man is not fit to be Prime Minister. And let's take a look at what Lee Harris said before we have a look at what the lefties are thinking about this. Lee Harris says, absolute disgrace. The Labour Party are rewarding Hamas for their horrific terrorist attack on October 7th. I'm so ashamed of this country. I feel really ashamed of this country after that. I thought that we were a country that, you know, although we have some squabbles and although we have pressure on the Labour backbenchers, typically as a country, we do always stand by Israel. But not today. Clearly not today. This is a shameful, shameful day for this country. So people who are pro-Israel are furious about this because they think that Labour and Keir Starmer are essentially rewarding Hamas. And also the lefties are furious as well. So Starmer has literally pleased nobody with this. Here's one of the lefties that says Israel is committing genocide all the time on their account. This is what they've said. Decent MPs need to table a no confidence motion in Starmer now. He has just used recognition of Palestine as a bargaining chip in exchange for Israel following its basic legal obligations. This is one of the lowest political acts in living memory. Absolutely livid, this lefty, okay? So it's not just us pro-Israel lot that are upset at this. Even Jeremy Corbyn is furious. He says Palestinian statehood is not a bargaining chip. It is not a threat. It is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people. Our demands on this shameful government remain the same. End all arms sales to Israel, impose widespread sanctions, and stop the genocide now. So people left and right are furious. And I told you guys I was going to show you that aid that is sitting there in case those numbers I showed you didn't convince you. This is the aid that is sitting and rotting away.
Hi, Tom Fletcher, UN's chief grifter. Here's a question for you. Remember when you made up the myth that 14,000 babies were going to die in Gaza in 48 hours if Israel didn't let food in? Total hoax that you made up and spread a worldwide hysteria. Well, here's a question. Here are boxes and boxes of baby food that Israel has let into Gaza and the UN hasn't picked up. You can see the UNICEF logos on them. You can see bottles of baby food that the UN isn't bothering to pick up and prefers to let rot in the sun. So 2 questions for you. 1, why haven't you been fired for spreading a hoax? 2, why has no one in your organization been hired for the gross criminal negligence of not picking up all this baby food when there are babies who need it? Let me know.
So there we have Elon Levy calling out people in the UN for spreading this hoax that it is Israel responsible for not allowing aid in, when the aid is so clearly there. We had Israel release drone footage of all of those pallets of food just sitting there. They've been let in, but the UN aren't picking it up. It's just rotting in the sun. And the UN, they don't want to be called out for their incompetence. They don't want to be called out for the fact that they are infiltrated, that UNRWA are infiltrated by Hamas, and it suits those people in Hamas for the civilians in Gaza to starve. You even had the Hamas leader Soleimani say before he was taken out by Israel, we need to maximize civilian casualties. Hamas want kids to die because it looks good for them. It makes Israel look evil. It makes Israel lose support. They are very happy for their own people to just die if it suits them and the Hamas leadership. Israel are working way harder than Hamas and way harder than the UN to try and help keep children alive, okay? Starmer has fallen for an absolute hoax. He is not fit to be our Prime Minister. I said at the beginning of this video, and I'll say it again, I feel like this is starting to look like the beginning of curtains for Starmer, this decision he's made today. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Chloe Dobbs, and make sure you press subscribe below if you want to see more videos like this.